Good morning. It's time for another installment of the By Chaplain. And as I was thinking this morning, I've had several individuals that I have talked with just this week that are struggling with some sort of behavior. As adults, we don't like to think about behavior. Behavior is something that we talk about for kids, right? But for adults, we also have behavior. And sometimes, in fact, pretty much all of us have some sort of behavior that bothers us. It's a behavior that we may have asked sometime in our life, maybe more than once. I don't understand why I keep doing this. Perhaps it's an addiction. You can name the addiction, whether it's alcohol or whether it's smoking or whether it's watching too much TV, being on social media too much, and whatever it is. Maybe it's an addiction. Maybe it's anger. Maybe you don't understand why you get so angry. Maybe it's your spending habits. Maybe you are struggling with keeping to a budget because you are impulsive in your spending. Whatever it is, you likely have some sort of behavior that you have asked, why do I keep doing this? And I want you to consider something. God has created us to be resilient, and even in the face of some pretty serious difficulties in our life, we get through. It's a little odd comparison, but I used to work for an animal hospital, and we would have an animal come in, a dog or a cat, that had some severe problem with a leg, and we would have to amputate that leg. And the owner would always say, I don't understand how they're going to cope or survive this. And we would always say, animals are very resilient. They will adapt. And they always do. They learn to walk, they learn to move, and many of them function just normal as ever. Well, same way with us as people. God made us to be resilient, and we get through things. When I look back at some of the tragedies that I've faced, which is really mild compared to what a lot of people have faced, I know that God provided me strength and that I did certain things to get through. So I said all that to say this. Sometimes the behavior that we do routinely, that we wonder why we do them, sometimes those behaviors had an origin after a time of grief or loss. I can't tell you how many times I've talked to somebody who is battling addiction, especially the addiction of alcohol or drugs. And I ask them, can you remember what was happening in your life the time that you first experienced alcohol? And more often than not, if they can think back that far, if they can remember that far, they will say, well, it was a very dark time. Why was it a dark time? Well, I lost my dad, or I lost my mom, or I had this happen or that happen. And so what happens is they turn to that drink to get them through that period of time. And then throughout the course of their life, anytime they have something that is even remotely emotionally challenging like that dark time was, they have an urge within themselves to return to that which they salved themselves with before. So a person that says they can't kick alcohol, that often is the case. They'll have another loss of some kind. They'll have another high-stress time in their life. And what do? They turn to what they know. What they know helped them through. We call these things STIRBs, which is a short-term energy-relieving behavior. It is something that you do that serves to take your mind and your emotion off that which is a challenge for you. And there are STIRBs all over the place. Exercise is not a bad thing in and of itself. But when it becomes compulsive because it is a time of forgetting what you need to deal with emotionally, then it is a problem. I like to see movies. That I have found that's one of my stirs. When I really have a desire to see a movie, it really means that I have a desire to get lost for a little bit. Now, is seeing a movie bad? Depending on the movie, no, it's not bad in and of itself. But if I'm doing that behavior in order to avoid dealing with the emotional pain that I'm feeling, then that's a problem. Because you can only kick that emotional pain down the road for so long. Eventually, it's going to come out. So, those behaviors that you have today, whatever it is for you, maybe it's retail therapy. If you've heard that term before, you know somebody that jumps online and has to buy stuff. For me, another stir that I have is sugar. I love Red Hots. I've learned that if I really have a desire for Red Hots, and I'm not talking about the hard ones that break your teeth, I'm talking about the little round ones. If I have a real desire to get Red Hots, then I know, okay, I'm struggling with something. I need to do an inventory here and figure out what is it behind the scenes in my mind or in my heart or in my spirit that is causing me some emotional pain. And then pray about that and give it over to God. Same way with anger. Anger is a stir for some people. They have outbursts. That's their way of coping. When they got angry before, when they were in a dark time, it was their way of pushing people away and getting them to leave them alone. It's a way of isolation. And so some people have this behavior where they have outbursts, and you have to ask, what is it that is behind this outburst? And so sometimes we don't give each other liberty either. I may have a friend that has this problem with anger and they outburst, and what do? I take it personally. Rather than asking, okay, I know this is not personal. This guy's a friend of mine. I need to look beyond that and figure out what is it he's struggling with and ask him, hey, I know you didn't mean to say what you said. I know that this is coming out of a struggle that you're having. You want to talk about it? We need to be giving one another the benefit of the doubt in that. For some people, it's sex. Sex addiction came out of this issue of emotional pain. For some, it's gossip, or with gossip, you basically are taking the attention off of yourself and putting it onto somebody else. Maybe it's reading magazines like People magazine or whatever. Not that reading magazines is bad. The question is, are you reading it just because you like reading it, or are you reading it because it's kind of a fantasy situation where you're able to lose yourself and forget that emotional pain for a little bit, whatever it is. So I want to encourage you with that. Take an inventory. The reason why I'm doing this behavior is because I must have some type of emotional pain. When did this begin? How long back can I remember this behavior? And see if you can put a finger on it. Because only when we challenge these behaviors within ourselves, do we recognize them and can we overcome them? And we can give those over to God and allow Him to have control. And when we have that emotional pain, rather than reacting the way we have conditioned ourselves to react, we instead react with prayer and with confiding in a friend who bears our burdens and fulfills Christ's law. Hope that's helpful to you today. Have a great day.